Our next guest in this program, he is Jeff COX, the former president of Snow Lion Publications, and he compiled the book, The Short Path to Enlightenment: Instructions for Immediate Awakening by Paul Brunton. And is an amazing book. I've been reading it, and I feel it's my friend on the path. Adyashanti says Paul Brunton gives voice to the profound teachings of immediate spiritual awakening that have the power to short-circuit the seeker in us and reveal the true nature of reality here and now. The true gift of this wonderful book is in how nuanced and subtle Paul Brunton understood these profound and transformational teachings, and how directly he conveys them. And Adyashanti says, read this book as you would a scripture or a sutra, and let it open your eyes to eternity. These accessible teachings distill the essence of currently popular and traditional sudden awakening teachings such as Advaita, Zen, Dzogchen, etc. Paul Brunton calls them short path teachings. A simple recognition, a moment of grace, can make what seemed like a far-off spiritual goal actual here and now, but we need reliable pointers for when and how and where to look. Hello, Jeff. How are you doing today?
Hi, Gary. I'm happy to be with you.
And I'm happy to be with you, too. This is one of the most profound books I've ever read, honestly.
I'm happy to hear that. What particularly struck you?
Well, what particularly struck me is how clear it is. How very clear, for instance, in my journey, when you talk about the long path and the short path, I know what he's talking about, and it's very clear to me when I feel that I've been consciously on a journey, and that my eyes are waking up more and more to the fact that I've been on this path, and that the short path is very very attractive. It's a way to go. It feels like a need the time is coming where to drop everything else that I felt like I needed, and just be what I've been searching for.
That's well put, to be what you've been searching for.
Yeah.
The short path really is about turning from the struggles that we do on the path in terms of developing our personality, trying to make our mind, body into a fit vehicle to express the divine that we all seek. But on the short path, the short path kind of comes about as we begin to recognize that the long path, disciplines and purificatory exercises and self-examination and so on, that these things actually go on and on and on, because the situations that arise in our lives always present new challenges that the personality has to adjust to. And at some point, you reach a place of recognition that somehow the car isn't the car you're driving is not the one that will get you to the goal. It's somehow realizing that the goal is already within you, and that the part of the long path discipline has been to bring our mind body into a condition which allows us to actually turn away from the things that have compelled us outwardly to the source within us, from which comes the things that we normally have recognized as the source of all of our virtues. For instance, the love we feel, the silence we can feel, the intuitive feelings or the intuitive actions, or the wisdom that can spontaneously arise in any situation. These are all things that arise actually from our own inner being, our higher self, or what Paul Brunton calls the overself.
So some people may get the sense that, all this struggle that I've been going and for, to find the source, to find my my true self, my true face, the enlightenment, nirvana, or whatever it is, the moksha, liberation. The struggle I can just drop and here's the short path, and then I can just hop on this and I'll get what I need immediately instead of going through. But there's a misperception which is in the book. You can read it there about the long path and the short path, and I want you to mention say something about it, Jeff. That the long path is probably necessary for most of us.
Oh, definitely. In fact, sometimes you hear stories about people, younger people sometimes, who have a quick kind of awakening. Sometimes it's called waking up, or in Paul Brunton's language, he likes to call them glimpses. And a glimpse of reality, a glimpse of our higher self, a glimpse of something that is in us, available to us, but beyond the personality, is something certainly that can totally reorient us and give us a sense like there's something divine at our core. But oftentimes those glimpses, they don't last so long, like Adya sometimes likes to say, an hour, a day, a week, a month, whatever. But then they pass, and you are then left with a slightly, let's say, juicier, tastier ego than what you had before. You have some new direction and new inspiration, but it's the obstacles are really within our own personality. They're what the long path really works to clear out and is the emotional reactivity complexes, our attachments, that where we think we're going to be happy if we only get such and such, are the things that we long for in the kind of way of feeling like we're not complete in ourself. And if I only say meditate more every day, or I only do more prostrations, like in Tibetan Buddhism we do a lot of prostrations, that I will then be at a place where I will then be able to perceive reality. But on the long path, you do X to get Y. There's a kind of a causal relationship. You can purify your body if you fast some, if you clean up your diet, and having a clean and clear body, proper exercise, flexibility, will help one to achieve a quiet mind. And that is great to help you to meditate. But as long as the effort in the sense of doing from within your own personality is dominating your effort, that's actually, in the end, you get in your own way. You're standing in your own way. So the short path, at some point, you begin to recognize that I'm standing in my own way, and then there begins to be a bit more of the surrender to what actually is. Usually the short path comes about as a path for one by a book, a teacher, an experience, something that reorients you and actually shows you, I am already the higher self. This is my true core. I don't have to do anything to be it, as you said. I am it. But then it's a different effort. Different orientation begins to happen, where we begin to recognize that all the good stuff comes from the higher self, in a way, and that if I orient more towards that, it's kind of like learn to stand in the waterfall of the grace that flows from the higher self. There might be one kind of image from this. And it's oftentimes expressed that long path discipline is important to develop concentration and a quieter mind, because it's in the quiet. It's like learning to yield into the inner quiet, that the overself can speak into us, either with quiet intuitions or inclinations towards one thing or another, or a quiet joy that comes for no external reason, or lots of fruits of this practice begin to flow as one reorients oneself towards the higher self.
Yes. The beauty of this is knowing that there is a short self, the short path.
The short path.
No, just the knowing of it.
What makes it short is that it's already there.
It's already there.
The path leading to the goal, it's already there. Okay, let's go on the short path. Okay, here we are. It's kind of like you can't gain more of your reality, is what you begin to recognize. You can't gain more of who you are by a path. It's already here. You could actually, if you study this a little, you pursue it a little bit, you could actually get that insight, that intuition, and it's like a lightning flash in the psyche. But then what you begin to confront is, oh, but I get so easily sucked into the various, situations of my day and the people and so on, and I lose track of who I actually am. So that's why the short path practices, as they're called, even though we already have had some sense of who we are, the short path practices are about the reorientation of the 180-degree turn, as PB likes. PB is what Paul Brunton used to call himself. PB liked to talk about the 180-degree turn away from the personality and its concerns, with its developments, with its ups and downs. You should turn 180 degrees and just face the inner sun of the overself. And at some point, you begin to recognize that the personality process is like a vortex of thoughts, and it's our clinging to the outcomes that we want, or the things that we're, judging wrong or right, or our involvement with all that story that some people talk about, our story, that are clinging to that process and wanting to get things right or better or so on, is what kind of keeps us bound into the whirlpool of the personality, rather than turning inwardly and beginning to receive more from our own inner being. And that becomes our guide in any situation. PB says somewhere that a measure of how spiritual one is how much one's life is guided by intuition. Because intuition is actually the voice of the higher self in us. And it's not always like big intuitions, like E equals MC squared or something, it's not like that. It could be just these little kind of inclinations. Oh, I think I should call so-and-so right now. And you call, and it ends up being it's the proof is in the fruit. So you get more of a sense from the response that life has to your own inner flow, that you're on the right track, that you're living more in the life stream that flows from our own higher self, rather than our shoulds and our oughts and those kinds of things. That kind of language is what comes from the long path personality process. Like, well, I really should do, whatever, go on retreat for a week, and that's going to help me, or, I'll be a better person if I do this or that. Short path cuts through all of that.
Yeah. It's very, I find it so refreshing to read about it. I feel like what I'm reading, I'm experiencing a lot of, and there. You
mean as you read it, you recognize?
I recognize that I have been on that. This is. I'm familiar with this.
Yes.
I've had these glimpses into this, and that I have inner knowing more than I'm almost willing to admit, because to the degree that I can admit it, I have to let go. I have to surrender. I just know that what it means to truly live the life I'm supposed to live 100%. Paul writes in the book, if I may read from it.
Of course.
Yeah, from the book, The Short Path to Enlightenment, Instructions for Immediate Awakening. I'm going to go into he makes the radiant discovery in his heart of its original goodness, but alas, When the presence departs, the lower self returns and resumes sovereignty. The period of illumination is often followed by a period of darkness. A spiritual advance, which comes unexpectedly, is usually succeeded by a period of recoil. Jubilation is followed by depression. A greater trial still awaits him. The over-self demands a sacrifice upon its altar so utter, so complete, that even the innocent natural longing for personal happiness must be offered up. As no novice and few intermediates could bear this dark night of the soul, and as even proficients cannot bear it without murmuring, it is reserved for the last group alone, which means that it happens at an advanced stage along the path between a period of great illumination and another of sublime union. And how I relate to this, Jeff, is that I'm recognizing that even though I feel that I've let go and surrendered a lot of the long path accoutrements, I don't feel like I need to do this or do this in order to get better. I think I've let a lot of that go, and I've recognized more and more in myself that the supreme nature of who I am is who I am, and knowing it and acknowledging it. But still, as a human being, I'm still faced with being a human being, with the trials I face, and yet I am encouraged and happy to know about this, to know that I'm on the right path, that just to know I'm on the right path. It's just good feeling.
Yes. That quote you read it's kind of like at the end,
It is
the final surrender.
It is.
It's where you can truly say, "Not my will, but thine," where you give over the steering wheel to God, whatever language, whatever imagery works for you. But it is a letting go. It's an absolute trust that the divine that you are can guide your life in the right way, even if it's going to be difficult for the personality in the process. But there's a certain kind of fearlessness that comes with living from one's core that will allow you to face whatever kind of darkness in yourself or in the world that would come later, or sometimes who knows, maybe today. But knowing that, your core is something that is it's not touchable by circumstance. That's the difference. We normally are so involved with our person and our physical being that any kind of concern or threat, perceived, discomfort that might happen, some social context in which we're shamed, or we don't perform well, or I give a crappy interview on this show, those kind of concerns are the old habit of thinking, I'm in charge here. I have to perform well. It's all up to me. And if I don't screw up, it's my fault and I'm bad. Well, this path, the short path, restores you to your original dignity and allows you to also be compassionate and forgiving of your personality for its continued shortcomings. So the glimpses you get, the greater light you get, always part of the purpose of that is to shine greater light into our habits and those corners of darkness that still exist in our psyche, where we still feel insecure, where we still have doubts about the truth of our inner being and how the divine can really be in charge or actually is in charge. Sometimes we think, well, yes, but I could probably do it better right now. So it shows where the fears and doubts still exist in us. But as the greater the light, the more darkness is revealed, and the darkness does get resolved. I think that's the happy thought. So with the short path, you're putting your money on God, on your inner being. It's actually not. It's what people normally there's a confusion. People think,
Yeah.
oh, I had an experience of God, but actually it's their own overself.
Right.
And the overself actually is an expression of God. It's the way God is individuated. In PB's language, he calls God the world mind. And he really has mind as the fundamental basis that we could call reality. But world mind is a particular, like the universe, the commonness of our experience, commonality of our experience, which is something a lot of non-dual teachers don't talk about, has to do with the fact that we are given the same world image to view. But through each of our own higher selves and our minds that are extensions of those higher selves into the world. If I'm not throwing too much at you all at once,
No, it's
do you
fine.
follow?
No, yeah, I am.
So it's really an inside-out job, not an outside-in job. The reality is something within us, and it, like spokes of a wheel, each overself brings into incarnation a certain unique vision, a certain aspect of the diamond of that is reality that you incarnate through your various incarnations, your many lives. And you can read about this in many of Paul Brunton's books. The particular book we're doing is focusing on just these two paths, but the greater sort of situation in which we find ourselves. Paul Brunton says there's three great questions. What's the world? What is God? And what is the self? And so in his writings, he really brings out answers. And not just answers, but leads you through a reasoned presentation to arrive at those answers. So it's really a journey that's quite wonderful. I've come back to it, actually, after 30 years of doing a lot of Tibetan Buddhism.
Yeah.
But Paul Brunton was my first inspiration, and I've come back to it again, and I've had this joy of working for the Paul Brunton Philosophic Foundation and also Larson Publications, who did this book, to, spend, like you're doing this radio show, and
Right.
it's such a wonderful gift to so many people. So it's always, like a blessing when one can do something, whatever kind of job it is, but do something where you feel like you're contributing in a way that's in accord with your own ideals and interests.
Yeah, well, without a doubt, and very blessed to be able to do this kind of radio and have guests such as yourself on. And Jeff Cox is our guest, and in the spirit this hour, and we're talking about the book, The Short Path to Enlightenment, Instructions for Immediate Awakening, by Paul Brunton, and Jeff compiled the Paul's writings for this book, which is amazing.